A junior high school girl with glasses and braided hair stands near Iori and asks him to go watch a movie together. She approaches him with a hopeful expression, trying to spend time with him the way she used to. Iori apologizes and explains that there is something he needs to do, something he considers one of the most important moments in his life. The girl has been experiencing rejection often lately, and Iori has become increasingly difficult to approach or invite anywhere. He leaves her alone in the classroom and asks her not to disturb him, just for today. She quietly agrees, accepting his request even though it clearly disappoints her. She opens the classroom door and steps out into the hallway. As she walks down the corridor, she passes another girl who is moving at a half-run, as if she is in a hurry. The braided girl slows her steps and watches. The girl who is running heads straight toward Iori. She apologizes for being late and stands in front of him, slightly out of breath. Iori gathers himself and says that there is something he wants to talk about. With a face that shows restrained embarrassment, he expresses his feelings to her. The girl with glasses remains at a distance, watching and listening. She holds back tears of frustration directed at Iori. After a moment, she turns away and runs down the hallway, leaving the scene behind. Time passes, and the weather becomes very bright. Iori looks up at the sky and feels the sharp glare of sunlight above him. At present, both of his parents are on a business trip overseas, and he uses this period to live as he pleases. His days move forward in a lazy rhythm. He does whatever he wants without much structure, and that becomes the pattern of his life throughout the spring season. A short-haired girl waves at Iori and calls out to her older brother. The girl is Ruka. She reminds him that if they do not hurry, they are going to be very late. As they walk together, Ruka asks whether Iori feels any excitement at all about his new class this season. Iori replies that he probably will not have any friends, so everything will likely feel ordinary. Ruka comments that it sounds sad, even though Iori says it with confidence. Iori apologizes for making his younger sister feel down. He then asks whether Ruka can introduce one of her friends to her unfortunate older brother. Ruka admits that it would be difficult. Iori adds that as long as Ruka is there for him, that is already enough. Ruka adjusts Iori's tie and tells him not to say something embarrassing so early in the morning. Iori notices how energetic Ruka is and tells her to hurry toward her junior high school, which is located in the opposite direction. Ruka remarks that her brother always has a clever way of responding to things. On the way, they encounter a girl standing ahead. Ruka greets her warmly. The girl is Hayoka. Hayoka observes how cheerful Ruka looks and notes that it has been a long time since they last meet. She notices that the siblings are heading to school together. Ruka encourages Iori to greet Hayoka as well. Hayoka tells Ruka not to force her brother to lower himself for her sake. She casually remarks that his facial muscles and vocal cords have already degenerated to the point where he cannot produce a proper sound. Iori responds with irritation, saying that her statement is annoyingly accurate, and he indirectly tells Hayoka to show more appreciation for her own throat. Hayoka replies with another sharp remark, suggesting that Iori should have used his spring break to improve himself. As usual, Hayoka's words are pointed when directed at him. Hayoka asks Iori to stop calling her in that particular way because she does not like it. Iori apologizes, though his tone carries annoyance. Meanwhile, Ruka simply watches the tension between the two of them without interfering. Iori's house and Hayoka's house stand very close to each other, and in the past they grow up as childhood friends. However, at some point, Hayoka suddenly begins to avoid Iori for reasons that remain unclear, and since then, a quiet distance forms between them. After some time passes, Iori finally realizes that Hayoka has begun a new chapter in high school. Her debut there marks a clear transformation. She is no longer the naive girl with glasses he remembers from before. Instead, she now carries herself as someone entirely different, more composed and more direct in the way she speaks and behaves. Hayoka tells Iori that there are many reasons why people call him the Quiet One. She explains that if he continues acting the same way, eventually no one will want to be friends with him anymore. In contrast, she states that her own life feels enjoyable and fulfilling. Her words strike directly at Iori's chest. The impact feels heavy, like a blunt statement delivered without any filter. There is no attempt to soften the truth. Hayoka lets out a quiet sigh and adds that she is probably the only person who is honest with him, and that he should accept that fact instead of avoiding it. She also questions why a conversation like this has to happen so early in the morning, as if the timing itself exhausts her. Without waiting for a longer response, Hayoka leaves first, walking ahead and putting distance between herself and the siblings. Iori simply acknowledges her departure without stopping her. Ruka then asks Iori what he has done to Hayoka to make her act that way. Iori admits that he does not know the answer himself. From a distance, Hayoka glances back at Iori and Ruka. Her expression carries a mixture of sadness and regret, though she does not say anything further. Time continues to move forward. Eventually, Iori realizes that he is once again in the same class as Hayoka. The situation makes many ordinary moments feel awkward and strained. In class, a girl named Azusa asks Hayoka what she does during the spring break. Hayoka responds that aside from spending some days with Azusa, she mostly watches movies and relaxes at home without doing anything particularly special. Azusa comments that even so, Hayoka still stands out because of her well-proportioned figure, as if she maintains it carefully. A boy named Kengo joins the conversation and casually agrees that her body does look good. Azusa immediately reacts and accuses him of making an inappropriate remark. During this exchange, Iori only watches from his seat. He happens to witness the moment by coincidence. He has no intention of getting involved, and pretending to sleep seems like the safest option. Azusa and Kengo continue their argument for a while, their voices adding more attention to Hayoka's presence in the classroom. Azusa then asks whether Hayoka is even listening to them. Hayoka apologizes and admits that her mind drifts elsewhere for a moment. Azusa repeats what she mentions earlier, explaining that she accidentally sees something surprising. She claims to see Hayoka receiving a love letter from someone. Kengo immediately looks excited and asks for confirmation, clearly intrigued by the information. At the same time, Iori struggles to hide his shock. He does not expect that Hayoka, whom he still considers an ordinary girl, receives a love letter from someone. The idea unsettles him more than he anticipates. Hayoka asks Azusa to return to her own classroom for now and promises that she will explain everything after the opening ceremony session ends. Azusa agrees and leaves the room, unable to hide her excitement about what she believes to be an interesting development. Now, Hayoka looks directly at Iori and tells him that he should leave as well. Iori comments that Hayoka has become quite popular, to the point where someone seems to confess their feelings to her almost every week. He adds that not all of them end up becoming her boyfriend, which makes him wonder whether she is the type who carefully selects based on appearance, or perhaps she is secretly dating a college student. Hayoka calmly denies both assumptions and states that it is not like that at all. She then asks whether Iori is pretending not to be interested while actually feeling curious inside. Iori immediately rejects the suggestion and insists that it is not the case. Hayoka continues, saying that this time she might find it difficult to refuse because the love letter comes from someone handsome. Iori expresses doubt that the person can be that good-looking. Hayoka explains that the letter is from Kudu, a boy from class 6. Iori realizes that he does not actually know who Kudu is. Hayoka mentions that Kudu asks her to wait in the classroom after school. After school, in a classroom filled with the warmth of early summer during the first year of junior high, a memory resurfaces in Iori's mind. It is a moment he never forgets. He begins thinking about a girl named Shimazaki Hayori, who sits next to him at that time. Back then, he gradually develops feelings for Hayori. She often teases him in a playful way, frequently starts conversations with him, and sometimes touches him casually during their interactions. Iori's heart becomes overly excited, and he convinces himself that Hayori must like him too. Even though Hayoka once explains that it might simply be a misunderstanding, Iori firmly believes that for someone as popular as Hayori to talk to him so often already feels extraordinary. Hayoka suggests that perhaps Hayori is simply being friendly. She questions whether Iori only interprets such actions as meaningful when they come from someone popular and not from an ordinary person. Iori grows irritated. He stands up and slams his hand against the desk because Hayoka keeps dismissing his feelings. Hayoka tells him that he should stay away from girls like that. Iori disagrees and leaves, telling Hayoka to mind her own business. Stubbornly, Iori later calls Hayori to the classroom after school and confesses his feelings quietly, making sure Hayoka does not know about it. Before Hayoka leaves, Iori asks whether she likes Kudu. Hayoka replies that her feelings toward him are nothing special. Iori then questions why Kudu dares to confess to her if that is the case, arguing that people only gather the courage to confess when they believe the other person has feelings for them. Hayoko admits that she does not understand what Iori is trying to say and even repeats his question back to him. Iori asks whether she plans to start dating. Hayoko answers that she does not intend to date anyone. Iori asks again whether the atmosphere will eventually feel like they are in a relationship, though he himself does not fully understand what he is trying to imply. He tells Hayoko that she should think more carefully after she finds someone she truly likes, perhaps someone who has always been close to her. Hayoko does not grasp what he means. Iori repeats himself, asking whether she does not realize that he has always been by her side. Hayoko responds that she may not pay much attention to that, but beyond that, she does not want to think too deeply about it. Iori then asks whether she receives confessions every month simply because she is surrounded by many handsome boys. Hayoko says that Iori only makes things more confusing. She adds that he should stop acting like a critic when he has no experience, especially considering that he himself has been rejected before. Hayoko tells Iori to take care of his own life because she does not plan to concern herself with it anymore. She states that he will continue living alone as a coward while watching her live happily. She emphasizes that all he needs to do is keep looking up at her from below. Iori stands frozen as he hears those painful words. He begins to question whether he once again steps into the same trap. He recognizes that this is one of the most hurtful verbal attacks Hayoko delivers to him in recent times, and the weight of it lingers in his thoughts. Iori walks home while thinking about movies. In the past, whenever he and Hayoko argue, she is always the one who apologizes first. After that, they usually go to watch a film together, and by the time the credits roll, they make up without needing to say much. Remembering that pattern, Iori decides to go to the cinema. It has been a long time since he watches a movie in a theater, so he chooses to go alone this time. He does not even check what films are currently playing. Instead, he selects one at random, thinking that any story will do for his current mood. After purchasing a ticket, he glances at his phone and notices that there is still time before the screening begins. With nothing else to do, he walks around the upper floor of the building. From that height, the view stretches across the city below. While wandering near an open space on the upper level, he notices a girl standing alone, staring out into the distance. She appears to be lost in thought. A moment later, she steps onto a slightly higher ledge. The movement immediately shocks Iori. His mind jumps to a worst-case scenario. Without allowing himself time to reconsider, he drops his bag and runs toward her, shouting for her to stop. He tells her that an enjoyable life is still waiting ahead. Iori reaches her and grabs her to pull her back. In the process, he loses balance and falls onto his back, bringing her down with him. The girl winces in pain and complains that Iori presses against her chest. They quickly stand up again. The girl brushes off her clothes as if nothing serious happens. She explains that she is only looking at the scenery. Iori admits that he thinks she is about to jump. The girl responds that such a thought makes no sense, especially since she has just returned to this city after being away for a long time. She feels nostalgic and simply wants to see the town from above. Iori apologizes repeatedly for grabbing her so suddenly. The girl lets out a small laugh and says it is not a big issue, though she casually mentions that Iori unintentionally touches her chest earlier. The statement sends Iori into panic. He imagines himself ending up in jail because of a misunderstanding. The girl asks whether he does it on purpose. Iori firmly insists that it is an accident. He apologizes again and adds, somewhat desperately, that he even has a younger sister, as if that detail can support his innocence. The girl eventually tells him that she forgives him. Her eyes move to Iori's uniform, and she guesses that it belongs to Koryo High School. Hearing that makes Iori even more nervous, as if she is now identifying his background. He quickly says that he is relieved she does not jump and repeats his apology about earlier. Then, unable to handle the embarrassment any longer, he runs off in a flustered manner, leaving her behind. The girl stretches her body casually after he disappears from sight. She comments to herself that Iori still does not like listening to other people, and that his personality has not changed at all. His carelessness, along with his tendency to help others without thinking things through, remains the same. She reflects that she wants to spend time playing together again, now that she has finally come back to this town. The next day, Iori sits in the classroom looking drained. Fear of social humiliation lingers in his mind and keeps him awake the entire night. The thought that a misunderstanding from yesterday might spread and damage his reputation makes it impossible for him to rest. As a result, dark circles form under his eyes, and his posture slumps over his desk. Hyoka notices immediately. She comments that Iori's face looks terrible since morning, and that it is obvious he stays up all night. Iori responds that Hyoka, of all people, should understand how fragile his current situation feels. Hyoka replies that she is not the only person who understands him. Azusa, overhearing the exchange, says that she has no idea Iori pulls an all-nighter. Hyoka asks Iori whether he truly does not sleep at all, but she quickly clarifies that she is not worried or anything like that. Azusa leans closer and whispers that she actually knows Hyoka often pays attention to Iori. Hyoka denies any special meaning behind it. She explains that she simply knows Iori from long ago and does not want any unnecessary rumors to arise from ordinary interactions. Azusa apologizes in a teasing tone. She adds that no one else speaks honestly to Iori, so he should be grateful that at least one person bothers to say things directly because that shows someone cares. Iori then asks about the strange dynamic between him and Hyoka, describing it as something that looks harmonious, yet somehow is not. Azusa remarks that Iori often seems invisible in class. Iori admits that he lives quietly and does not stand out in any way. Azusa laughs, though Iori does not fully understand what amuses her. Hyoka comments that Iori is not like this in the past. She firmly tells Azusa not to connect unrelated ideas, emphasizing that she only knows Iori in an ordinary sense and nothing more. Azusa gently urges Hyoka not to get angry so easily. Hyoka concludes that Iori is a gloomy and irritating boy. They suddenly remember that class is about to begin. Someone asks about the classical language assignment. Azusa groans because she has not completed it. As for Azusa herself, she is known as a beautiful and friendly girl whose presence easily draws attention. Her charm carries strong influence within the classroom. Meanwhile, Iori struggles to fight his drowsiness. Lack of sleep combined with another tense exchange with Hyoka exhausts him, yet he forces himself to stay awake. After some time passes, his eyelids grow heavier. He faintly hears classmates talking about a transfer student. The conversation blends into the background noise, and eventually Iori falls asleep at his desk. Some time later, he wakes up on his own, feeling disoriented because no one bothers to wake him. Azusa mentions that everyone keeps talking about the transfer student, while Hyoka appears uninterested. Hyoka reasons that the new student is probably assigned to the neighboring class, which means the chance of interaction is minimal. She thinks that limited interaction at a time like this might actually suit her well. Azusa insists that the transfer student is both cool and cute. She teasingly asks whether Hyoka would panic if someone she likes is taken away by this newcomer. Hyoka calmly states that she will not panic and has no intention of thinking about such possibilities. Azusa claims to understand, though she continues to tease. Suddenly, the classroom door slides open. A smiling girl stands at the entrance and looks directly at Iori. She is the transfer student. Without hesitation, she walks toward him and suddenly hugs him tightly in front of everyone. The entire class falls silent in shock. At the same time, Hyoka's expression hardens, and irritation becomes clearly visible on her face. Iori does not understand what is happening. A girl is suddenly hugging him in the middle of the classroom. She repeatedly calls his name, making sure he hears her clearly. Iori freezes as he realizes that she knows his name, yet he has no idea how. He studies her face more carefully, and recognition slowly forms. She is the same girl he pulls back from the ledge at the cinema rooftop the other day. The memory returns instantly, but he cannot comprehend why she is now standing here, inside his classroom. Hyoka immediately demands an explanation about who the girl is. Iori admits that he does not understand the situation either, and does not appreciate being pressured for answers he does not have. Before he can say more, the girl hugs him again, even tighter than before. She says that it has been a long time since they meet. Iori remains confused, though he cannot ignore the faint fragrance that lingers from her hair and uniform. Their bodies are uncomfortably close, and the entire class watches in stunned silence. Hyoka raises her voice and orders them to separate. She tells the new girl to behave appropriately within school grounds and not to act freely in front of so many people. The girl explains that she gets carried away because she has not seen Iori for a long time. Hyoka repeats her question, insisting on knowing who this transfer student really is. Iori answers again that he truly has no idea. The girl then asks Iori whether he does not remember what happens yesterday. The question makes him jolt internally. His mind jumps to the incident at the rooftop, especially the accidental contact that could easily be misunderstood. If that story spreads, his social standing could collapse instantly. Hyuka narrows her eyes and asks what exactly happens yesterday, suggesting whether Iori already tries to flirt with some random girl outside. Iori protests, saying that Hyuka knows he is not that kind of person. Hyuka acknowledges that point and says it is better to ask the girl directly. The new girl finally introduces herself. Her name is Amayayu, and she is indeed the transfer student everyone talks about. Hyuka questions what business a transfer student like her has with a lazy boy who never changes. Yu interrupts and comments that Iori looks pitiful. Hyuka asks why she is the one who feels sympathy toward him. Amaya calmly states that she knows Iori. Her claim causes both Hyuka and Iori to stiffen in surprise. Iori quickly asks whether she mistakes him for someone else, because as far as he remembers, yesterday at the rooftop is the first time they ever meet. Yu insists that she is certain. The face and the name match perfectly. He is Iori. Iori cannot grasp what she truly means, but he senses that if this continues publicly, his peaceful routine might completely fall apart. Without thinking further, Iori grabs Yu's hand and leads her out of the classroom, searching for a more private place to talk. Yu smiles brightly, observing that Iori remains unexpectedly calm under pressure. Iori mutters that he simply needs to hide for a moment before things grow even more complicated. They arrive at an empty room, away from the noise of the classroom. Iori stands there, slightly out of breath after pulling Yu along the corridor. He immediately asks whether she holds some kind of grudge against him. Yu looks confused by the accusation. Iori explains that when a transfer student suddenly approaches him so openly, people will inevitably start paying attention to him, and that kind of attention never brings anything good to his quiet life. Yu asks again whether he truly does not remember her. Iori searches his memory, but finds nothing clear. He admits that he cannot recall anything at all. Yu then explains that when they are children, their fathers are close friends, and the two of them often play together. Iori tries to dig deeper into his memory. Yu gently helps him reconstruct the past, mentioning small details from their childhood days. Gradually, fragments of memory begin to resurface in Iori's mind. After several flashes of recollection, he finally recognizes her. Yu beams with excitement when she sees that he remembers. Iori then asks, in genuine confusion, whether she has not been a boy all this time. Yu stares at him, not understanding the question. Iori explains that back then she has short hair, wears plain t-shirts, and runs around in shorts. To his younger self, that appearance strongly suggests that she is a boy. Yu bursts into laughter and tells him that he draws conclusions too carelessly. She says that having a childhood friend return as a girl now should be considered a stroke of luck. Iori finds that way of thinking unusual. Yu comments that Iori remains kind and unintentionally funny, just like before. Iori replies that someone recently calls him a coward who never changes. Now that they reunite, Yu eagerly suggests that they start playing together again like in the past. Iori immediately says that it is impossible and wonders whether Hyuka is his girlfriend. Iori answers that she is not, adding that even if such a possibility exists, Hyuka would be the one to refuse it. Iori then tries to reason with Yu. He tells her that she is a beautiful girl now, and if she stays too close to him, other people might become jealous. Yu appears to float happily at the compliment, clearly pleased by his words. Iori quickly interrupts that reaction before it goes further. Yu insists that he should not worry about what others think because she wants to keep being around him. Iori clarifies that he does not have any strange expectations. He firmly states that you should maintain some distance, since other girls in school will soon start paying attention to her presence. At that point, Yu calmly asks whether Iori will be fine if everyone finds out about the incident involving her chest the other day. She casually suggests that perhaps it would be interesting if the entire school hears about it. She wonders aloud whether his peaceful life can survive such exposure, especially since she personally does not mind talking about it anymore. She asks him directly how he thinks that situation will unfold. Iori exhales in defeat and admits that he gives up arguing. Yu smiles brightly, satisfied with his surrender. Iori adds one condition. If they are only going to reconnect as childhood friends, then the rooftop incident must never be mentioned to anyone. If it spreads, he could easily end up being beaten by someone who misunderstands the story. Yu agrees without hesitation. Together, they walk back toward the classroom. As they move down the hallway, Iori reflects that he might still face serious social consequences because of this sudden reunion. However, he also allows himself to hope that once the initial shock passes, his quiet and steady life might return to normal again. Meanwhile, elsewhere nearby, Hayoka quietly listens as the two of them approach, aware that something between Iori and the transfer student is beginning to change. Hayoka stands face to face with Iori and demands that he explain everything clearly. Iori answers that the girl is simply a transfer student. Hayoka immediately states that such an answer is insufficient. She points out that Yu stands far too close to him and even claims to know many personal details about his life. In truth, Iori does not want to reveal anything further, especially because he still remembers Yu's earlier threat. To protect himself, he repeats that everything is normal. The vague response only confuses Hayoka more. She then guesses whether Yu might be Iori's ex-girlfriend. Iori firmly denies it. Hayoka quickly adds that such a thing is impossible anyway, and that there is no way she would not know if that were true. Her remark carries a sharp edge, as if implying that it is unlikely for any girl to have feelings for Iori in the first place. The comment lands like a subtle but precise insult. Iori briefly explains that Yu is only a childhood friend, and that there is nothing strange about it. Hayoka reacts with visible surprise. Her tone rises as she insists that she never hears about this girl before. As far as she knows, she is the only childhood friend Iori ever has. Iori clarifies that he never mentions Yu because their connection happens before Hayoka moves into the neighborhood. Hayoka exhales sharply, clearly dissatisfied. She questions how someone who claims to be just a childhood friend can casually hold hands with him the way Yu does earlier. Iori insists that there is no intimate meaning behind it, but Hayoka responds with irritated mockery. Frustration builds in her voice. She says that the entire situation makes no sense. She suggests that perhaps Iori simply leans in too eagerly toward a cute girl without understanding how inappropriate that looks, and that such behavior is enough to make anyone uncomfortable. Iori counters by asking whether the criticism directed at him actually reflects Hayoka's own hidden wishes. Hayoka falls silent for a moment, concealing whatever emotions surface inside her. She then states firmly that his joke goes too far and that she has absolutely no desire to act intimately with him. Hayoka begins speaking about proper stages in relationships, emphasizing that people do not simply rush into physical closeness without a defined connection, even if such dynamics exist elsewhere. Iori questions why she directs all this frustration at him when the matter supposedly concerns Hayoka and Yu. That response only angers her further. For a brief moment, her expression shifts, and she forces a sarcastic cheer. She mocks that Iori finally finds a real girl in the real world who can spoil and indulge him. Iori admits uncertainty about that idea. He comments that having someone who likes him is not necessarily a bad thing, especially if that person is not emotionally cold. Hayoka exhales quietly and asks in a very low voice whether she behaves coldly toward him. Iori fails to catch the meaning of her murmur and does not respond properly. Instead, he asks whether she can also take a joke, letting out a small laugh. That reaction pushes Hayoka's irritation even further. At that exact moment, Yu approaches from behind and greets Iori enthusiastically. Hayoka mutters that Yu appears the moment she is mentioned. Trying to regain composure, Hayoka remarks that Iori is not the type of person who suddenly shows up just because someone calls him loudly. Iori replies that it should be that way, though there are certain exceptions. He walks toward Yu, says goodbye first, and leaves Hayoka standing there. Hayoka remains silent as she watches the two of them together. She then returns to her seat and presses her hand firmly against the desk surface. This time, there is a feeling inside her that she does not fully understand, and that unfamiliar sensation lingers long after they disappear from her sight. Azusa approaches Hayoka and apologizes for making her wait. Hayoka does not look fine at all. Azusa's eyes briefly shift toward Iori, who is currently talking with Yu nearby. Azusa seems to understand something from that glance, though she still asks again about Hayoka's condition. Hayoka answers that the way Azusa keeps asking only makes her feel more tired. Azusa observes that Hayoka's face looks unusually sad. Hayoka begins to wonder whether other people see her as a cold girl. The possibility feels like a serious problem. Azusa clarifies that Hayoka is not the cheerful type to begin with. She tends to be quiet and slightly gloomy, which naturally makes her appear colder compared to others. Hayoka listens carefully and accepts that perspective. Azusa proudly claims that this conclusion comes from her sharp, analytical mind. Hayoka lowers her gaze to the desk, her expression resembling someone in mourning. Without any preface, she suddenly begins to tell a story, catching Azusa off guard. She explains that this is about an old friend of hers who has a childhood friend. Recently, that childhood friend becomes noticeably closer and more affectionate. Azusa comments that it truly sounds like a story about childhood friends, but she quickly realizes with relief that the person being discussed is Iori. She has already guessed as much. Hayoka admits that something feels different lately. The lively atmosphere brought by that returning childhood friend changes the balance she is used to. Azusa asks whether Hayoka worries that her own childhood friend is changing. Hayoka nods. She mentions how he openly acts affectionate with another childhood friend, and even describes Hayoka herself as cold. Azusa signals that she understands. Hayoka wonders what she should do. Azusa asks her to imagine how she would respond if she were in the position of that childhood friend. After hesitating, Hayoka answers honestly that she might feel lonely and would probably try to show her feelings more clearly. Azusa confidently says that matters of the heart can be entrusted to her because she considers herself skilled in romance. Hayoka remains doubtful, but Azusa reassures her. Azusa declares that this is the perfect time for Hayoka to act a little spoiled. She claims that boys do not dislike that behavior. She adds that when a girl who normally seems cold suddenly shows a softer and clingy side, it can easily melt someone's heart. Hayoka questions whether things can truly unfold that smoothly. Azusa responds that the main goal is to resolve the major crisis at hand. Hayoka understands that Azusa is encouraging her to reveal a cuter side of herself. However, she still feels unsure about how to appear sweet. Azusa suggests that Hayoka should occasionally offer compliments and try to be more honest with her emotions. Hayoka processes every word carefully. For her, acting sweet feels extremely difficult, but she decides she will attempt it, even if it seems embarrassing. Azusa looks genuinely impressed. When Hayoka asks why she seems so pleased, Azusa explains that every friendship needs someone to play the role of motivator. Hayoka agrees, unaware that Azusa has already realized the entire story revolves around Iori, even though it is obvious. Hayoka asks Azusa to demonstrate an example, but Azusa mentions that she has something to take care of today. She proposes that they continue the discussion over the phone later that night. With that, Azusa hurries off, leaving Hayoka alone with her thoughts. Night eventually arrives in quiet stillness. Iori sits on the sofa at home, reflecting on a rather exhausting day. After school, he walks home together with you. The events since her arrival turn everything unusually chaotic. He already senses that tomorrow might be just as tiring. Suddenly, Ruka forcefully pushes against Iori's side, trying to claim the sofa. She announces that she wants to watch a drama and questions how long he plans to lie there lazily. She continues nudging him until he loses the spot. In the end, Ruka successfully takes over the sofa and thanks him with a small laugh, while Iori relocates to a chair at the dining table. Ruka begins watching a television drama. Iori asks whether it is any good. Ruka confidently answers that it is, especially because it features many handsome actors. Iori acknowledges that such reasoning is typical. Ruka is already a teenager, and it is natural for her to feel attracted to others. However, a thought begins to disturb him. One day, Ruka might have a boyfriend. When that day comes, Iori believes he will be the first to evaluate the boy. Ruka accuses him of being overly intrusive. Iori argues that he cannot accept the idea of Ruka having a boyfriend who cares for her less than he does as her older brother. Ruka dismisses his mindset as outdated. Iori claims that although he understands, Ruka becomes embarrassed and starts acting like a tsundere. Ruka counters that such exaggerated personalities do not exist in real life. Iori agrees, admitting that he has never truly encountered someone whose feelings are that transparently obvious. Ruka advises him not to be overly protective for now. Iori concedes that interfering too much is not good either. Then he jokingly concludes that to save time, he will simply punch any unsuitable candidate. Ruka shouts in frustration, questioning what kind of outrageous action her brother is planning. Meanwhile, on the same quiet night, Hayoka sits somewhere with unusual determination as she makes a phone call to someone. her tone far more energetic than usual. One day at school, Iori is standing near the shoe lockers, casually switching out his shoes. But something feels off. He can sense it. People are staring. There's a strange tension lingering in the air around him, like he has unknowingly stepped into the spotlight. He tries to ignore it and focus on putting his shoes away. That's when he runs into Hayoka. Iori pauses. He is pretty sure Hayoka's locker is on the opposite side of the hallway. So what is she doing here? When he questions her, she quickly claims it is just a coincidence. Her voice sounds a little too rushed to be convincing. Hayoka notices Iori yawning even though it is still early in the morning. She asks if he stayed up all night again. Iori does not answer her directly. Instead, he jokingly asks if she is some kind of fortune teller. Then he remembers that their houses are right next to each other. If his bedroom light was on all night, she could have easily seen it from her window. That thought makes more sense. Hayoka suddenly grows flustered. She stumbles over her words, awkward and tense, and forces out a stiff good morning. Iori blinks at her in confusion. Why is she acting like this today? And why is she greeting him so normally? It feels unusual. Still stammering, Hayoka blurts out that his hairstyle actually looks pretty good today, since it is different from usual. Iori casually replies that it is just messy bed hair, and that he plans to fix it later anyway. Hayoka panics. That is not what she meant. But in her nervous rambling, she accidentally says that he should fix it first. The timing could not be worse. Azusa suddenly appears and greets Hayoka brightly before dragging her away. She claims she has something important to ask her. Iori watches them leave, completely puzzled about what just happened. Meanwhile, Hayoka is also confused. She finally gathers the courage to give him a compliment, and somehow it turns into a disaster. Azusa quickly understands the situation. Hayoka panicked and failed at execution. Simple as that. Azusa suggests that maybe Hayoka should try being more honest next time. For example, she could just straightforwardly say that Iori looks cool. For Hayoka, that suggestion feels impossibly heavy. Saying something like that directly would take enormous courage. Still, Azusa encourages her to take it one step at a time. Hayoka realizes she needs more practice. From that moment on, she keeps watching Iori all day, during PE, during class, even during break time. Iori eventually notices her suspicious behavior. But instead of overthinking it, he decides to focus on lunch. He sits down and opens his bag, taking out his homemade bento. Hayoka approaches him and hesitantly asks if he is eating alone. He nods, narrowing his eyes slightly in suspicion. She glances at his lunch and comments that it is unusual for him to bring food from home. Iori replies that he needs to save money. Hayoka explains that her friends are not around today, so she is alone too. She tries to steady her racing heart, though her restless feet betray her nervousness. She notices he is alone. This is her chance. She wants to ask him to eat together. But before she can finish her sentence, Yu bursts onto the scene with full energy and cheerfully invites Iori to have lunch with her. Iori greets Yu just as enthusiastically and asks whether she is tired and if she has finished her business with the teacher. Yu happily confirms that everything is settled and she can finally relax. At that moment, it is as if Hayoka does not exist. Yu admits that she was in such a rush this morning that she did not have time to prepare lunch. Iori quickly corrects her, teasing that the real reason is because she overslept. Yu laughs loudly, completely exposed. Iori suddenly shouts that if she is going to buy food from the cafeteria, she should hurry before everything sells out. Yu widens her eyes in shock, then rushes off toward the cafeteria. Iori chuckles to himself, muttering that Yu really is a busy person. Only then does he notice Hayoka still standing there. He apologizes and asks her to repeat what she was saying earlier, since Yu's voice drowned it out. Hayoka quickly shakes her head and claims it was nothing. She tells him to hurry up and go. Iori shrugs, grabs his bento, and leaves. Hayoka remains behind, quietly burying her wish to eat lunch with Iori again like they used to. Azusa walks toward Hayoka while holding a small piece of chocolate in her hand. She gently explains that eating something sweet can help improve a person's mood, especially when they are feeling down. Hayoka quietly accepts it without protest and places it in her mouth. Azusa watches her carefully and asks how it tastes. Hayoka gives a short and simple response, saying that it tastes sweet. After a few moments pass, Hayoka slowly begins to actually enjoy the chocolate, instead of just chewing it absent-mindedly. The sweetness settles in, and her stiff expression softens little by little. In that moment, she almost resembles a small animal nibbling on food, calmer than before. Azusa observes the change and feels slightly relieved seeing her friend ease up. Azusa then carefully brings up the topic they discussed the previous day. She asks whether there has been any progress regarding the guy Hyoka likes, referring to Iori. Hyoka admits that things are not going smoothly. Her voice carries frustration rather than anger. Azusa nods in understanding, as if she already anticipates that answer. Hyoka continues by explaining that talking to the person she admires feels pointless because nothing she says ever truly reaches him. She feels as if her words simply bounce off without leaving any impact. She begins to question herself and wonders whether her behavior comes across as spoiled or overly clingy. Azusa realizes that this is a sensitive moment. If she answers carelessly, the conversation might shift in an uncomfortable direction. Hyoka might even deflect and tell Azusa to experience it herself, even though Azusa does not currently have someone she feels that way about. Choosing her words carefully, Azusa suggests that Hyoka should continue expressing herself little by little. She believes that eventually Iori will realize things on his own if she remains consistent. Hyoka remains unconvinced, pointing out internally that Iori is the type who is particularly difficult to read and even harder to make aware of subtle feelings. Azusa agrees that Iori's personality truly makes things complicated. Seeing Hyoka still troubled, Azusa pulls her into a gentle hug. She reassures her that she is willing to listen to every complaint and every worry she wants to share. Hyoka feels grateful for having such a supportive friend by her side. She then reflects on the current situation and wonders whether the answer to her concerns is already obvious when she looks at how things stand now. Azusa does not want to diminish her hope. Instead, she comforts Hyoka and reminds her that she is a cute and sincere girl, and that things will eventually work out. To lighten the mood, Azusa suggests that they spend lunch together that day. Hyoka agrees and thanks her quietly. At the same time, in the school cafeteria, Yu examines the bread she has just purchased. She feels that something is unusual about it. The spaghetti bread she normally buys is usually filled with Napolitan pasta and tomato sauce, but what she receives today contains pasta salad instead. She questions the difference while looking at it closely. Iori calmly explains that arriving late means only the remaining items are available, and that this is simply what is left. Yu comments that if she knows this will happen, she would rather have asked Iori to buy it for her earlier. Iori proceeds to open his bento box. The contents are simple, consisting of frozen food and leftover side dishes from the previous day. However, Yu reacts enthusiastically and repeatedly says that it looks delicious. She continues praising it until Iori stops her from exaggerating. Iori then asks whether she actually wants to try some of it. Yu gives an uncertain response, which sounds more like a possibility than a firm answer. Iori points out that such a vague reply does not clearly express her intention. Realizing this, Yu apologizes and suggests exchanging their food. Iori refuses her offer, clearly uninterested in trading for the unusual pasta bread. Yu attempts another strategy by proposing that they exchange portions, even if she has already taken a small bite. Iori immediately rejects the idea and says he will not be fooled. Although he does not want her bread, he is still willing to share some of his food. Yu accuses him of being stingy, but he denies it. She then directly asks for the fried chicken inside his bento, which happens to be the main dish. Iori is surprised because she aims straight for the most important item. She questions whether that request is not allowed. Eventually, Iori gives in to her persistence. Yu then reveals that she does not bring chopsticks. She leans slightly closer toward him, clearly expecting something. Iori immediately refuses the idea of feeding her in a public place like the cafeteria. Yu comments that if he is uncomfortable with indirect contact, he could simply toss the food into her mouth directly. Iori feels that the situation is becoming increasingly chaotic, yet he understands that Yu enjoys teasing him and will not easily give up. After gathering his resolve, Iori picks up a piece of fried chicken with his chopsticks and moves it toward her. Yu happily accepts it and comments on how good it tastes. In the end, she takes the chicken from his chopsticks herself because Iori hesitates for too long while thinking. She then questions whether he actually wants to feed her from the beginning. Iori firmly denies such an implication. Just as Yu seems ready to request something else, Hyoka walks past them and notices the scene. She asks what they are doing. Iori immediately feels unlucky, believing that this is the last person who should witness the situation. Yu greets Hyoka casually, but Iori quickly attempts to stop her. Yu appears confused, while Iori quietly admits that he does not want to become the subject of endless teasing. Yu observes the interaction between Iori and Hyoka and remarks that they appear close. At that moment, an unspoken sense of rivalry begins forming between Hyoka and Yu. Hyoka comments that she briefly thinks Iori and Yu look like a foolish couple, especially considering Iori's personality. Iori insists that it is all a misunderstanding and urges Yu to clarify what just happens regarding the lunch. Yu lightly states that she only places the food into her mouth. Iori is visibly startled by the wording, while Hyoka interprets it as indecent and inappropriate. Yu then suggests that perhaps Hyoka wants to eat together with them. Hyoka quickly denies it. Yu continues by saying that eating with Iori is enjoyable and references past experiences. Iori asks whether they truly eat together before. Yu confirms it confidently and claims that he simply forgets. She adds that she even eats at his house in the past. Hearing this, Hyoka states that she also eats at Iori's house before. Iori struggles to remember either situation and cannot verify their claims. The atmosphere grows tense between the two girls. Yu casually comments that Hyoka looks like a child. Hyoka feels irritated, sensing that she is being led by Yu's manipulative rhythm. Frustration builds within her, and she declares that she will leave. She firmly states that she no longer wishes to eat together. As Hyoka walks away with restrained anger, Yu lets out a quiet laugh. She appears satisfied, as if she has just learned something important about Hyoka's feelings. That afternoon, Yu tells Iori that she can no longer keep going, and that her stamina is completely drained. She mentions that in the past her endurance is much stronger than this, so she asks for one more round. Iori holds the basketball in his hands and shoots it toward the hoop. The ball bounces off and hits the rim instead of going in. Yu immediately takes that as a sign that everything is finished. She looks genuinely happy, saying that playing basketball during break time is fun and refreshing. A few male students nearby begin to notice Yu as she casually unbuttons a few buttons of her shirt because she feels hot after the game. Iori quickly tells her that doing something like that in public is not appropriate. Yu asks why, sounding confused rather than embarrassed. Iori realizes that Yu does not seem aware of how naturally cute she appears to other people. Yu stretches her body and comments that exercising after eating is good for the body. Iori agrees to a certain extent, but says that doing it every single day might be excessive. Yu replies that doing it occasionally is perfectly fine, and she flashes a sweet smile that makes Iori unexpectedly nervous. He ends up agreeing again. At that moment, Iori becomes aware that Yu is surprisingly skilled at finding his weak spots and pushing them gently. Yu then grows nostalgic. She mentions that in the past she often plays like this with Ruka. She says she misses Ruka and wants to meet her again, believing that Ruka must have grown into a beautiful girl by now. When it comes to that topic, Iori confidently confirms that it is true. Yu immediately teases him by calling him a siscon. Iori defends himself, saying that he simply cares about his own younger sister. Yu responds playfully that if that is the case, then she also wants to be treated with affection. Iori notices that Yu is clearly wearing a mischievous expression when she says that. Later, after arriving home, Iori lies down on his bed to rest. His body feels sore from playing basketball earlier. As he stretches out on the mattress, he remembers how Hyoka often tells him to exercise more regularly. He begins to realize that what Hyoka says actually makes sense. He exhales and lets his body sink deeper into the bed. Not long after, Ruka suddenly enters his room with a panicked expression. Iori turns his body away, signaling that he does not want to be disturbed. However, Ruka insists that she is not joking and urgently asks what he has done this time. The mood immediately shifts into something more serious. Iori does not understand what she is talking about. Ruka explains that there is a girl outside calling his name repeatedly. She even adds that perhaps the girl plans to sue him and drag him to court. Iori quickly denies that possibility, stating that he is not a criminal. He guesses that it might be Hyuka, but Ruka shakes her head and says it is not her. She clarifies that the girl outside is extremely beautiful and is smiling strangely in front of their house. Iori has difficulty believing it, but Ruka urges him to see for himself. The two of them stand quietly for a moment. Then the doorbell rings. Iori asks whether that is the person Ruka is referring to. Ruka admits that she is not completely sure. Iori tells Ruka to open the door, but she looks frightened and refuses. Instead, she pushes her older brother forward, telling him to face whoever is outside and take responsibility for his supposed wrongdoing. Ruka genuinely seems to think Iori is some kind of bad person. Iori approaches the door and slowly opens it to see who is standing outside. Before he can properly react, the person forcefully pushes the door open, causing him to lose his balance and fall backward onto the floor. The unexpected visitor turns out to be you. Ruka panics and rushes to check on her brother's condition. Meanwhile, you ends up sitting directly on top of Iori as he lies on the floor. Ruka grabs a pillow and lightly hits you on the head with it while demanding to know who she is. She tries to pull you away from her brother. Throughout the chaos, you continues laughing as if she finds the entire situation amusing. Iori struggles to stay calm because Yu's movements are far too dangerous for his heart in such close proximity. He tells her to get off him immediately. Yu apologizes casually, saying she forgets that Iori is underneath her. Iori quickly stands up once she moves away, while Ruka carefully checks to make sure he is not hurt. Yu then shifts her gaze toward Ruka. Ruka raises her voice and demands to know who Yu is, questioning why this girl suddenly barges into their house. Yu asks whether Ruka truly forgets her. Ruka responds honestly that she does not remember her at all. Yu introduces herself properly to Ruka. Ruka falls silent for a moment, trying to search through her memories. She then asks why Yu knows her name and wonders if she might be some kind of stalker. Yu lets out a small laugh and says that perhaps too much time has passed, which is why Ruka forgets about her. She compliments Ruka, saying that she has grown up beautifully and become very pretty. The praise immediately melts Ruka's suspicion. Iori notices how Ruka suddenly becomes shy and bashful. Ruka then turns to Iori and asks why such a nice girl has business at their house. Iori comments that Ruka's heart is far too easy to win over and says he worries about her future. Yu explains that she and Iori are old friends. Ruka admits that she briefly assumes her brother's relationships are filled with questionable things. Iori responds that his little sister has become bold enough to speak sharply now. Iori then explains his past connection with Yu while Ruka listens carefully. Gradually, Ruka begins to remember Yu, but there is one major confusion in her memory. She recalls Yu as being a boy. Yu firmly clarifies that she is completely and unquestionably a girl. Ruka stares in astonishment. Yu says that she comes over because she wants to hang out after such a long time apart. Iori immediately objects, stating that it is not appropriate for a girl to visit a boy's house alone. He asks Ruka to explain that point from a fellow girl's perspective. However, instead of supporting him, Ruka becomes excited and tells her brother that this is a golden opportunity. Iori stands there in disbelief, realizing that Ruka's earlier panic is completely gone as if it never happens. Ruka cheerfully announces that she will go out shopping so the two of them can enjoy their time together. Iori firmly repeats that he just says it is not acceptable for a girl and a boy to be alone together in the house. Ruka casually responds that she will always support her big brother no matter what. Soon after, she leaves, and the house becomes quiet, leaving only Iori and Yu inside. Yu comments that Ruka is very sweet. Iori agrees, admitting that his sister is something he takes pride in. Yu then asks for permission to come in further, even though Iori has not clearly given it yet. Since she already steps inside, he ends up ignoring the situation. Yu looks around and says she feels nostalgic. She guesses that Iori's room is on the second floor. Iori confirms it. Without hesitation, Yu quickly walks toward the stairs and heads for his room. Iori tries to stop her, but she moves too suddenly. He warns her that his room is not cleaned up yet. As Yu goes upstairs, Iori briefly glances toward her skirt and feels that she is being far too careless. Suddenly, Yu shouts as if she discovers something shocking. Iori suspects that she is deliberately creating drama. Yu claims that what she sees is unfair for someone going through puberty. However, when she actually looks around, she compliments how clean and tidy his room appears. Iori thanks her awkwardly. He admits that it has been a long time since he lets anyone enter his room. Yu corrects him, saying that she is not just an acquaintance but a childhood friend. Iori acknowledges that point. He then says he will go downstairs to prepare some tea and firmly warns her not to mess around in his room. Yu agrees, though her playful tone makes it clear that she might not completely behave. The last time a girl enters Iori's room is when Hyoka comes over. Since then, no other girl has been inside. Because of the basketball game earlier, Iori's body feels sore and worn out, to the point that he forgets to stay properly composed, especially considering that Yu is a girl. Carrying 2 cups of barley tea, Iori walks back into his room. He finds Yu still glancing around, observing every corner with curiosity. He asks whether she can drink barley tea, but she does not immediately respond. Instead, she continues scanning the room. Iori then asks what exactly she is doing. Yu suddenly questions where Iori hides his indecent magazines or inappropriate items. She claims that there is no way he does not have something like that. Iori calmly replies that the internet is already advanced enough, implying there is no need to hide physical collections. Yu sounds slightly disappointed, saying she thinks it is almost mandatory for a teenage boy to collect such things. She finally accepts the tea from him and thanks him. Iori decides to shift the topic and asks what her real purpose is for coming over. Yu casually answers that there is no particular reason. She simply wants to hang out and have some fun. Iori feels that trying to analyze what she is truly thinking is pointless. He knows he will not fully understand her motives anyway. After a short silence, Iori asks how the version of himself in Yu's memories from the past compares to who he is now. He wonders whether that image of him no longer exists. He adds that if he has changed from the person he used to be, what would you do about it? Yu answers that she is happy to meet him again. She has been wanting to see him for a very long time. Iori asks if that feeling still applies now, after seeing who he is today. Yu confirms that it does. From her perspective, Iori has not changed at all. She even reminds him that he helps her right away when they meet again for the first time after so long. Iori brushes it off, saying it is only a reflex. Yu shakes her head slightly and explains that this is exactly what she means. His natural kindness and instinct to help others is what she considers his best quality. Iori finds it strange to hear that description of himself. Yu seems puzzled that he cannot see it the same way. Then, with a playful expression, Yu straightens her posture and subtly shows off her figure. She asks whether she has grown into a proper and attractive woman. Iori responds that she looks decent enough. That simple answer makes Yu jump lightly in excitement. Iori then adds that in the past, he actually thinks she is a boy because her chest is completely flat. Yu bursts into laughter and steps closer to him. She asks whether he truly pays attention to her that closely before. Before he realizes it, Yu pushes him down onto the bed and ends up on top of him again, just like earlier downstairs. She comments that he used to handle situations like this without hesitation. Iori falls silent, unsure whether she intends to continue teasing him this way. He carries a slightly uncomfortable memory connected to this kind of position from the past. Yu provocatively asks whether he wants to confirm for himself that his childhood friend is indeed a girl. She slowly begins unbuttoning her shirt one button at a time. Iori has no idea how serious she is being or what she plans to do next. His thoughts become scattered. Just as tension builds, Yu suddenly leans close to his ear and whispers that she is only joking. Then she quickly pulls away and stands up, releasing him. She explains that they used to wrestle like this all the time when they are younger. Iori nods, though his body still trembles slightly from the sudden rush of adrenaline. He acknowledges the nostalgia, but firmly tells her not to do something like that so abruptly again, because it could seriously shock him. At that exact moment, a knocking sound comes from the bedroom window. Both Iori and you immediately turn their heads toward it. Standing outside is Hyuka, smiling in an unsettlingly steady way, almost like a surveillance camera observing them. Hyuka taps repeatedly on the window and asks what exactly Iori and you are doing inside the room.